I'm Melissa Como, licensed therapist and board-certified counselor. One important thing I've learned in my own life and working with individuals and couples is we experience more joy in our lives when we are in fulfilling and supportive relationships. Think about it. When something bad happens, you call on the people you know will be there. And when something really great happens, you want the people closest to you there to celebrate. This is the heart of my practice. At Heartfelt Counseling Center, we are here to help you learn the skills to have satisfying and successful relationships. We understand that relationships can feel complicated. Let's help you make it simple. Contact us today for a free consultation and follow us on social media where we talk all things relationships. Thanks for listening.
Welcome everyone. So we are here tonight for our live event with Heartfelt Counseling Center and our guest Edna Pierre. I'm going to go ahead and introduce my self for the recording for people that watch this back. So my name is Melissa Como. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Florida. I have a private practice that focuses on individual and couples and their relationships. And I have added some women retreats as well as groups for women as well, which I'll talk about more today and on other lives as well. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce my dear sister friend. I'm going to have her do more of her introduction, but she graciously agreed to join me tonight. Again, I asked her to come last year. We did Black Love and Black Business, and it was so popular. She was my number one live, had the most views. I got like all these people following me after she came on, and I had to have her back for this topic. So hopefully, as by now, y'all know that oftentimes I want to bring on guests when I do have guests for people that I really know in real life. Because again, I'm about relationships. So I want to make sure that that transfers to my live talks as well. And so me and Edna have been friends for a long time. I think over 20 years now, since high school. So some of the conversations we have had on lives before and you'll hear tonight and hopefully more after tonight are things we really talk about. Like we really talk about it. And so when I think about these topics, I think to myself, like who in my life I know personally and professionally who would be a great person to have a conversation with about this. And I feel like I'm take a step out and say that this is something that we talked about even before we knew what it was as teenagers and young women. And we're able to have a fancy word to talk about what it is now. And so that brings us to our topic, Black love and imposter syndrome. You know, I got to put a Black love spin on it. So now I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Edna to share whatever introduction you want to share with the audience, and then we'll get started.
Okay. Thanks for that toss up, Mel. Everybody, good night. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Attorney Edna Pierre. I am a personal injury and family law attorney. My office is located in Miramar, Florida. That's in Broward County. And I'm here to talk about the struggles and joys of growth and getting through imposter syndrome. So welcome, everybody.
Yes. So before we get started, we need to get the chat hot, y'all. We need to get chat hot because we got 2/3 of PBW on the screen, but we have our other sister friend, Cynthia St. Paul, in the chat. So before we get started, I need people to drop, so I know that y'all alive and with us. Go ahead and drop PBW in the chat, okay? Go ahead and drop PBW in the chat. And when the first person that drops it, I'm gonna tell you a story behind it because it's a great story to tell. So go ahead and drop PBW in the chat, okay? So I can know that y'all in the building with us tonight. We can't get started. I need a PBW.
You see it,
yeah, she sees our shirt. Come on, PBW. All right. I'll go ahead and tell the story because y'all just, y'all just being shy right now. That's okay. So PBW stands for Progressive Black Women. Okay. All right. Okay, JP. I know who that is. Okay. PBW. That stands for Progressive Black Women. So my college roommates became sister friends. So it was Edna and then Cynthia. And so my now husband coined us PBW. All of our chats are called that. I think last time Edna and Cynthia was on my show, people wanted to be in PBW. So we're going to have honorary members throughout the night if y'all want. That's fine. And we have some matching shirts tonight we'll talk about later. But we just wanted to go ahead and get the chat hot before we get started with the conversation because imposter syndrome, y'all, is no joke. Okay. And whether or not you realize you are you have it or not as a Black person, experienced it, you probably do, and you'll probably realize it after we talk about it tonight. And I want to go ahead and put some PBWs on the screen so people can see. All right, PBW, that means you're alive and with us, okay? And then we have beautiful women. Yes, exactly. So I love this chat. We have a PB. Someone wrote it real fast. It's okay. We're going to take it. PBW. But yeah, so that being started, I think, so I always like to give a backstory, like why I picked the topics I pick. I always like to give the Black love spin on it because I want to make sure that we give a cultural context, because we know that our experiences, Black and brown people, are different. Yeah, thank you for fixing that, Uncle. Black and brown people, we experience things differently, you know, and I think it's better that we tell our own stories rather than other people tell it. And so that's why I want to make sure that we include cultural conversations in the conversation. And imposter syndrome is probably something we've heard the term, but we don't always know what it means. And so we're going to talk about that more tonight. So I have a list of questions for me and the chat about, but I want you guys to please jump in the chat and share your thoughts and your opinions about this topic as well, because I will put them on the screen so people can see, and that might build more conversation as it normally does. So that being started, we're going to start with just a simple question, hopefully, Edna can answer for us. What her thoughts on this question is, what does Black love mean to you, Edna?
I feel like, you know, at the end of those movies, like the Malcolm X movie where everyone said, I am this, I am that. I feel like Black love can be followed by a lot of different definitions, but I'm trying to stay in the context of what we're talking about tonight.
Go wherever you want, sis. We'll follow you.
Fill in the blanks however you see fit. But tonight I'm just going to focus on Black love and identifying how integral one part is to the whole.
Yeah.
And how valuable you are in each moment, despite what you're faced with, despite what's in front of you, despite what's making you doubt who you are or where you belong. I think Black love is standing in your conviction and knowing who you are, even in moments where you feel like you don't belong, or maybe you feel like what Rihanna said, fake it until you make it.
Exactly.
So I think that's, I'll stick to that definition for.
No, we love everything you had to say. So however much you want to say is fine. And feel free in the chat to drop in as well. Like, what do y'all, what does Black love mean to you, right? I like to start off with that because I feel like it's a conversation that we need to always have. And I love your definition and your explanation of that, because you are sharing and talking about how Black love is not just romantic, but it has to do with our community. And that's super, super important. And hopefully for those of you that have been coming to my chats or watching any of my content, although I'm a relationship therapist, I do have a lot of couples that come to me. It's hard for me to stick to just that in terms of Black love, because of how much I see other relationships impact even my couples, right? Because we come from families come from other families, right? So we live around people, so it's hard to just keep it to just romantic. And I think what you shared, Edna, is a great example of how broad it can be, and that's important of our experience. So I appreciate you sharing that. And again, anyone go ahead and drop in the chat. I'll go ahead and share it on the screen as well. And so another question I want to ask has more to do with kind of a theme I'm going for this year in terms of my talks and stuff, to just drop a little bit about myths of Black love, right? And so I had Brittany Carter, who came last month, and we talked about worthiness and our retreat coming up and that kind of thing. The month before, I just did a whole like top 5 of my 5 myths of Black love. And so I want to make sure I not just keep it to just my thoughts, you know, I make sure I ask other people, because that's important to, you know, be able to get other people's thoughts. So for you, Edna, what would you say is one myth about Black love or Black people that you want to see dismantled?
The one specifically dealing with strength, because I think that we pride ourselves so much about being strong and things like that, that we take on things and we go through things and think that, oh, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? And we don't take into account how much of a toll those things take on us, just mentally, even down the road, or how it affects you in the next atmosphere, in the next environment, and how that may take a toll on how you present yourself. I think that we have to give ourselves credit for how strong we can be, but also take a step back and realize where we need more nurturing and more support. and more encouragement and just more uplifting so that we can help each other. So that we can help each other, remind each other of who we are and what our values are and what we're meant to be in this world.
Girl, you already got fires in the chat, girl. Let me show you your fire signs. Okay? That's important. That is important. And I would say, just to kind of add on to what you're saying, I feel like that's kind of like those like rock in the hard place kind of situations where it's a compliment in the sense, right? Like somebody is strong, but then when you have strength be used as a weapon against you, so to speak, or as a way to not see your vulnerability or a way to not give you support, it becomes weaponized, right? So it's not just, oh, okay, you strong, but it's like, you know how they say, check on your strong friends? But it's the same thing. It's like, it doesn't mean because someone presents as strong, and I say presents because we all have moments we don't feel strong. It doesn't mean they need any less care, you know, so to speak. So I think what you're talking about is really important. And I think it's definitely a part of our culture in terms of, you know, again, something that's a positive attribute, but it doesn't mean it takes away our humanity. And I think that's part of kind of what you're saying as well. I'm going to go ahead
and add on to that too. Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's it.
Yeah, I think it pigeonholes us a lot. Like what you're saying, being caught between a rock and a hard place, it pigeonholes us a lot to think that I can endure this, I can take this, or that, oh, that doesn't matter, that person's strong, they can take it. And you're not doing yourself any favors by taking on extra burdens that you don't have to. You're not doing yourself any favors by taking on a bigger burden or a load that you can't carry, because ultimately what happens, you might start to feel like, okay, I really can't take this on, or I'm not cut out for this. And you start doubting yourself simply because you've taken on too much to begin with. And I think self-care and self-love starts with knowing what's burdening us, and also what is too much and when is too much.
Exactly. And I think if we operate off the fact that we're strong and the strength kind of attribute, then we tend to not see what our capacity is because we feel like we have to keep pushing. I would say to keep pushing, you know, in our culture. And that again takes away our humanity. It takes away the challenges that we're going through, you know, and the support that we may need. And so I definitely agree with that. And so we have some comments in the chat. This week I'm learning strength does not have to come from adversity. What? Sweet Rattler. And then we got some, yes, Sweet Rattlers in the chat. You know, I'm going to leave this up on the screen for a minute because, you know, that kind of reminds me of the whole struggle love thing. Not to get too much on the romantic, you know, topic of it, but I feel like it's the same thing. You know, check on your strong friends, struggle love. Like there's this, I guess, narrative that is the only way you can build strength. We know that's part of it, but that's not all of it. But you're going to add something?
It's through struggle. That's what it is.
Yeah. And actually, when you think about it, the people that do experience struggle and adversity, maybe more than others, are usually expected to continue. Right? It's never like, you've been through enough, sis. Like, you've been through enough, brother. You could have a seat. It's like, oh, you know how this goes. You could do some more. You know, like you can keep going.
You can take it. You can take it.
Right. Because if you think about, if we can even take about culture out of it, just think about people. Like if you think about your work setting, they're going to often ask the person that's going to say yes and that can take it, and that's the strongest person or the
eager person. Yep.
Well, you gonna add something?
Yeah, the most eager person or something. But and also speaking in context of Black people in that Black experience too, we don't like to seem weak. Like that's the opposite of it. Like you want to seem strong, but you don't know how to express weakness. Like I know that I have a problem with that. I don't know how to express weakness. So if I'm in a situation where I'm faced with either pretending that I'm strong and go in a bathroom and break down, I'm not going to show you that side. I'm not going to
like too many times.
Like I can't give you that satisfaction. So we internalize all that pain and all that buildup, anxiety and all that stuff. And we think, okay, we can just deal with it later. But that stuff has an effect. You have to be able to filter that out because it's going somewhere.
I tell my clients that all the time. It's energy. It's going somewhere, you know? And I have some more comments. I think people are just, you know, moved by what we're saying already. My Uncle Jonelle from New York is saying, wow, I was about to ask the question, how much does myth play a role in our thinking? Exactly. Like, so we're kind of building this. Thank you so much, Uncle Junior. Like, we're building that together, right? Like if we have a myth and we're operating off that narrative, how does that play into how we think, our psychology behind it, how we behave, how we treat each other? Like think about it, how we treat each other. If we are expected to be strong in our culture and then we perpetuate that narrative, yes, of course there's non black people that obviously put some of that on us, but then we also perpetuate that in our culture. Then when we see someone, vulnerable or crying or upset or angry, even because anger, underneath that there's something going on, people just can't always see it. It's like silencing that emotion or that space
or masking it.
You're trying
to
mask it. Exactly. And so I think it's important to unravel some of that and dismantle those myths so that way we can create more space for authentic emotion, for humanity. And also not to be, I think the other piece of it too is that when people present as strong, it also takes less, I think people feel less burdened, right? Because if someone is expressing their emotion or expressing something they're going through, it is requiring or calling for the people around them to do something, even if it's just to listen. And so it's kind of like when people say, well, people don't really want to know how you're doing, but they just ask it just for for being polite or just to kind of say it.
It's like default.
But then when you really say how you're doing, not everyone necessarily is in that space to hear at that point, So I think that's the other piece of maybe why the strength part of it is so appealing, not only because it is the positive attribute in a sense, but also when someone is not feeling strong, what does that require of our community to help that person with? That if that person's strong, they got it. I don't got to do nothing. They good. All right, I'll call you next month, make sure you're alive. But otherwise,
keep piling it on. Just keep piling it on.
I'm with you. There's some more comments in the chat. We have choices are sink or swim. When they see you swimming, they assume it's easy. It's survival mode. Yes.
Because you make it look easy. Right.
Exactly. And I love that because I think that is the whole masking part you're talking about, right? Like just because you are surviving doesn't mean that you're doing well. Like doing well and surviving, y'all, is two different things. Surviving just means you alive. There's a lot of people alive who are not doing well.
It's like that iceberg. What you see at the top, what you see on the surface has nothing to do with what's going on internally. Has nothing to do with anything that you're experiencing in that moment. People do a good job of keeping a poker face.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why, going slightly off topic, the reason why we're seeing so many mass shootings and things like that, I think people are tired of putting up a front. People are tired of living lives that don't serve them, that they don't connect to. And people are tired. They're breaking out, they're breaking down, and you're seeing people hurt other people just because of what's happening internally. So I think it's extremely important for us to help each other. And even bringing it back to the Black community, we don't focus enough on mental health, right? So this is a movement to that end. And I think that if we give each other the credit we need for being strong, but also encourage each other to seek help, encourage each other to go out there and get the help that we need so that we're in the best mental health also.
Yeah, no, I love what you're saying, because when you're speaking to what I've been thinking about a lot lately, how can we have less polarizing conversations? So how can we have conversations that's more inclusive, not just inclusive of people, but inclusive of thought, of perspective, right? Because when you say still give ourselves the credit or acknowledgement that we're strong, but at the same time be able to give us space for when we need support and we need help, right? Both can exist at the same time. I think we feel like when one is in the door, the other one's out the door. But really, if you think about who you are as an individual person, you're a complex human being. You don't just come with one dimension. Even Black people, I know I'm calling it Black level. There's all different types of Black people out there. Not only one kind.
Same experience.
Exactly. So I think when we are able to have less polarizing conversations, I think that is so much more real, because when you think about your day to day, almost nothing is black and white. So why should these topics be any different? But those are the ones, when you think about social media, for example, are more sensationalized, or the most clickbait, like even the whole gender role conversation. I know it's not a whole romantic conversation. I don't care for those. I'm we already know, somebody wrote that book. Let's talk about what we actually experiencing every day. It's not that simple, And so I think that the same thing with strength and
vulnerability, so to speak, or needing help, it's the same thing. Just because you experience one doesn't mean you can't experience the other, or vice versa. That's so important. I'm going to go to the chat because there were some other comments about what Black love means to people. So before we move on, I want to put them up here. Okay. So we have loving the uncomfortable. Black love is loving the uncomfortable. I like that. Thank you, JP. We have Mary says Black love is patience. And this reminds me of grace. I'm going to do a whole talk on grace at some point soon because we talked about it last year, but we didn't unpack it, I think, as much as we could have. And I think sometimes people think grace means like not having accountability, which is a whole other thing, you know. But Black love can include all of it. Like, again, no, like less polarizing conversations. And then another comment when we move on to our question. Black love is understanding what we experience as people and support each other in those dwellings. Yep, exactly. Having some understanding for sure. And then I think to your dismantling comment, we have that women are masculine. Yeah, so that goes back to the strength piece of it. Like, just because you, let's say if you're a woman, just because you present as strong doesn't mean you're masculine. Like, let's move on like, from those things. And then we have another comment here. Normalize mental health in our language, like going to the gym and watching sports. That is so true. I think going to the gym is like one of those things like, oh, you stressed out, go for a walk, go to the gym. It's so easy to say, you know, like go do something physical, you know, but sometimes it's not just about the physical expression. It's about the mental.
Yeah, sometimes you need a quiet space. It's not about getting it out physically. It's about sitting in a quiet space and listening to your conscious, listening to your soul, that inner voice that tells you, that directs you in the right to the right path. It's about sitting there and listening and being in tune with yourself. So everybody has a different resource that they use, you know what I mean, to deal with things. But yeah, some people may like the physical and some people may have to turn internally in order to deal with those things.
No, I agree. I want to make a note about attunement of self because I think that'll connect with imposter syndrome, but I don't want to get too deep and off track, but I think it'll tie in. That's important. And so we got some, yes, solitude is very important. I think some people are uncomfortable with being silent and being alone. I know when I first started like practicing meditation, and which is just like listening to like relaxing sounds and using kind of just seeing where my mind goes. At first, I know when I teach my clients how to do it, they are uncomfortable with the silence part of it or just not physically doing anything. And I think even that can tell you a lot about yourself and where you are in your journey because, you know, like you weren't born doing that. You were just born. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so let's get back to that space of just being for a second. Even I struggle with that. So I get it, you know. So the next question we're going to move on into is, what do you think, this is for Edna, whoever has comments in the chat, please participate. What do you think is unique about imposter syndrome in the Black community? But before you answer that, I like to define words because I want to make sure we talk about the same thing. So imposter syndrome is I'm reading off Google, y'all, so follow me. Imposter syndrome is the condition of feeling anxious and not experiencing success internally, so this is inside, despite being high performing in external objective ways. This is perfect for the conversation. So we have internal, like anxiety, not feeling successful, even if you're doing all great things outside of yourself. Okay, so that's imposter syndrome. And so I'm going to repeat the question and then Edna can share her thoughts. What do you think is unique about imposter syndrome in the Black community?
So for me, I think a lot has to do with representation. And I think a lot of imposter syndrome comes from not seeing enough of ourselves reflected in society in key and essential roles, in productive roles. I think generationally that has had an effect. Nowadays, not so much because we have social media, which can be a blessing and a curse, right? It's a blessing because now at the tip of your fingertips, you have access to look up Black doctors, Black herbalists, Black scientists, Black astronauts. You have it at your fingertips to be able to go look at those, go look at people who are in those fields and who do what you want to do. On the other end of that spectrum, though, social media inflates a lot of things, and it gives you the sense that life has to look a certain way. And life has to be perfect at all times in order for your vision to actually be reality. And I think sometimes we don't take into consideration that just because something didn't look the way you perceived it initially, it doesn't mean the plan is not working. I think that we have, for me personally, I think in my journey, I've experienced a lot of, I call them slaps in the face, because what I thought and envisioned of this particular leg of the journey, when it actually came about, I wasn't able to appreciate it as much because I thought it would look different. So then I'm starting to doubt things. I'm starting to doubt, well, is it me? Is it the environment? Am I really not supposed to be here? Where's the disconnect? And sometimes it's all mental. Like we can do the physical steps to get someplace, but sometimes the emotional work is left behind. So when that doesn't catch up, you get to a point where there's a disconnect. Your reality isn't matching what's going on in your mind, and you're almost living in two different realities. You're not able to appreciate that. No, my journey is unique. I'm here because I'm supposed to be here. I'm here because it's a part of what I'm supposed to be doing, a part of my greater plan. I'm not here by accident. You know what I mean? My steps are ordered. Even before, going back to biblical teachings, even before you had breath in your body, your steps were already ordered. So when you think of it that way, it kind of helps take off the pressure of not knowing, of not being familiar with certain surroundings, and always planting your feet firm and saying that whatever door I walk into, I belong there.
I love that. I think, part of what you're sharing has a lot to do with kind of what the definition was saying, was like how you feel on the inside. Mm-hmm. I would also add to that also with the definition and kind of what you shared shows that it's not so much about what you do on the outside when it comes to this topic, for example, because you could do all the things but still not feel content within yourself. And I love how you talked about it looking a particular way, because I know being your friend for so long, we've shared a lot of stories about what we thought our lives would look like, good or bad in between. And I also know in our transition, we've had conversations about exactly that, things not looking how it looked, how we were thinking it was going to look. And I think because we've been friends for so long, we have the luxury, I feel like, to kind of be that checks and balances for each other, because you can say, hey, sis, you ain't never told me you want to do that, or where did that come from? Or remember you had said that before? And sometimes we literally forget. Like, you remind me of things, I remind you of things. And it really helps to kind of put it into perspective where it can happen. At least for me, I can speak for myself as your sister friend, and like it helps me kind of check in with myself about what did I say, what did I express before at some point. And it's okay. And I think the other piece of it is to learn that it's okay if it changes, right? Like whatever that vision is for yourself. But it has to also be okay if it's not what you envisioned as well, right? I think that's the kind of like piece of it in terms of like what you hope for yourself, what you imagine. But also I think even for the things that we've shared, I know I've shared that I may have gotten to, it goes back to the internal space of like, okay, I've gotten to all these things, but then now what? There isn't that, when you're a young child or a teenager or whatever, those younger years of imagining your life, you don't really think about how you're going to feel about any of it. At least for me, I just think about what it looked like. But you had a reaction, so we're going to add something?
No, you're exactly right. I think a lot of times we play that, when I grow up game, I'm going to do this, we think about all the things we're going to do, all the places we're going to go. I don't think, at least for me, I never thought about how to process things emotionally, how I was going to feel at those levels. I thought that if I got to those levels, it automatically meant happiness. So when I got there and happiness still took some work, again, the disconnect. I was like, maybe I'm not happy at all. And then that soul work had to happen where I had to parse through, okay, what is it about this that I've achieved that actually does make me happy? Or what was the misconception? Like, was there something that I thought that I would feel or gain from getting this thing? And when it doesn't match up, then that whole idea kind of disintegrates and it makes you doubt again. So
exactly. No, I love what you said, because I think we definitely relate to I relate to everything you're saying. I think because obviously we had the conversation before in real time, right? We're like reflecting back now. But yeah, I agree. I've never thought until I would say the past few years, and I think a lot of it, as you know, had to do with becoming a mom, that I had to actually think about how I felt past the surface, And so same thing. It's like, okay, if I get these degrees, if I get this job, we talk about, that jobs, we always talk about jobs, right? And then you get there, you're like, this is not, even we were joking about it, even with Cynthia, I know she was chat, like, that's not what they told us it was gonna be like. They said go to school, get good grades, get a job.
It was a whole formula. A plus B equals C. They gave us the A plus B equals C, and it didn't equal C. It didn't equal C.
No,
Not automatically.
It's alignment work because you're like you said, there isn't. I think I'm gonna use the word alignment, but it feels misaligned because you were thinking it was gonna be a particular way, but then it's not, or it is. Whether it is or not, the misalignment is the internal process, which it goes back to the imposter syndrome piece of it, right? I'm gonna put some things up here because a lot of people are commenting. So we have, and sometimes we have to celebrate the journey while we're waiting. Yeah. So there is a goal that you have. You don't want to only focus on the goal. I think that's what Mary's saying, but you definitely want to enjoy the process or appreciate it. And I would say, to add on to that, I think if we do that more, then we would catch ourselves, I guess, earlier on in that imposter syndrome experience or just being dissatisfied because we're not just focusing on the goal at the end. We're actually letting ourselves experience the being of it, the whatever, the goods and bads, so we can really know what these things would feel like rather than anticipating this A plus B equals C, which is not, what it is, so to speak. So that's really important.
And I want to just insert something that I did not realize played such a role in my own journey. So I talked about this the last live also, is how much of an impact our upbringing has on us and how we process things today. So we touched on it last time, and I said, I always had good experiences in school and things like that. I was always praised for good work in school. So a lot of my identity came from that. And because of that, though, especially growing up in a Haitian household, I always compare it to the Asian culture, because we use shame a lot as a teaching instrument. And we say "Opa want" or "son want." All this stuff is about shame. Like the way that we rear our children sometimes has a lot to do with shame. And I think internalizing that also affects how we process things in the future. So I realized maybe right when I first started working as an attorney, I realized that a lot of the things, the way that I process things is, I don't have a gradual scale of emotions. Sometimes it doesn't just go from, oh, I made a little mistake, okay, I'm disappointed, or okay, I see where I could have done better. It goes from, oh man, I made a mistake, that's so horrible, I don't belong here. It went straight to shame. And by doing that and having that mindset, it made things a lot worse. It made me overthink because I always felt the need, oh damn, like I made a mistake, I don't want people to know, I can't come back from this. I'm automatically thinking the worst. And somebody else may see, okay, it was just a mistake, like it's not that serious. You don't have to process it that way. But also that feeds into the imposter syndrome, because it comes into this isolated thinking, like, oh, I'm the only one that's made this mistake, I can't believe I would be the one to make this mistake. You take too much in and you don't give yourself enough credit for the good work that you are doing.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Like, I don't even want to add to that. I want to pause it there and go to the chat, because what you're sharing has a lot to do with the child rearing that I know in our culture, Black and brown cultures. We're both Haitian, obviously, and we know our parents mean well, and we all gonna do something to our kids, but nothing ill intended. But I think this is good insight for us as adults and for those of us who are parents to kind of think about how those things would shape our children. It's no shade, it's nothing, but the more we kind of face it, I think we can be more honest about it, and be able to make shifts around that. But we have some really great comments in the chat. We have Haitian Speed that says, imposter syndrome is more common in the Black community, in my opinion. In order to overcome it, it requires open conversation, just like this one that we're having tonight. Build supportive networks. Supportive networks is important, for sure. And then we have Jonelle Albert, my uncle here, says, again, wow, you guys are falling to all my questions. What do you think? Oh, here's a question. What do you think about only being responsible for the effort, not the outcome? Oh, that's a good one. What do you think about only being responsible for the effort, not the outcome?
Well, I think specific, the effort in being strong, or I just want more.
I'm gonna take a stab at answer. If you could be a little more specific, Uncle Junior, Jonelle Albert, and if you can, but I'm gonna say something I think I would think about this, which is basically I would think that you don't have control over the outcome, right? So if you only focus on your effort, which is what you have control over, then that may help with the imposter syndrome, right? Because imposter syndrome is basically like focusing on the outcome, but then inside it's still not enough. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like focusing on the process versus, or like what Mary was saying, the journey versus the end goal or whatever the case is. So I do think focusing on your effort, I think, would be more helpful than the outcome, because with imposter syndrome, you're focusing on the outcome, but then you still don't feel good. Like, it's still not enough. You know what I'm saying? So, but more inside of what you can contribute, what you can do, I think would be more helpful. But of course, sometimes you make mistakes, sometimes you're not perfect. So that's fine. But at least it takes you away from just the outcome part, because the outcome part, you're not focusing on yourself at all. Like, you're just focusing on outside of yourself. But the effort, at least, you a little bit more in, even though you still have to give yourself grace if you make a mistake or something like that. So that's how I would answer it. But that's a really good question. Anybody else can answer that in the chat. That's just what I would say.
I see where he's going with that. It's about giving yourself credit and not focusing on what could go wrong. Because if you do focus on, there's going to be 1,000 answers of what the outcome could be, and that is, once you deliver what it is, that's out of your control. So that's kind of like putting yourself through misery, trying to guess what can happen and all the ways it can go wrong, as opposed to having a genuine conversation with yourself. Did I do what was required? Did I do my best? Is this what I can put forward? Am I proud of this? Does this represent me? Does this represent my standards or my values? If you ask yourself more positive questions, I think the answer will be more positive also.
Yes, I agree with that for sure. I think that's important. There's a comment about professional spaces. I think, we talk about this all the time. I know you and me, and a lot of people around me that's, personally close with. That adds to, obviously the Black experience with imposter syndrome. And this for me speaks to, like, a lot of times we talk about this too, Edna, like feeling like we have to like get all the credentials, and we do have a lot of letters behind our name, I'm not trying to toot our own horn or anything, but we do, and we're still sitting up here talking about imposter syndrome. Let me just say, okay, those letters don't take it away, you know what I'm saying? But it actually makes me think of conversations I've had with my husband before, and I think, of course, with you and me, Edna, where like whenever we want to do something new, we feel like we got to go do a whole training on it. We got to do a whole certification, a whole degree sometimes.
Take the long way.
Qualified, and then we talk about how other populations, non-Black communities, at least from our experience, for our, the people that we've seen in our professional career, I can't speak for everybody, it doesn't necessarily seem that that's the same route that they're taking, right? And you could look at that in terms about how, even just in the statistics, how Black and brown people have to have more experience, more credentials, more whatever, just to kind of match maybe a non-Black person who doesn't have that, who has less than that. And so that just perpetuates the whole imposter syndrome as well in those professional spaces, because, you're thinking, okay, let me just do all these things and then I should be fine. But then someone who looks differently than you has less or does less or whatever, and then they end up getting the promotion, the job increase or whatever. And so it kind of like feeds that imposter syndrome of like, oh, I got to do more, I got to do more. But really, we talked about worthiness last month, like, you're enough just as you are. Of course, you have to, you want to show, if you're talking about the work setting, you want to present yourself and work hard, so to speak, or whatever. But even that can be loosely determined nowadays. It's like, what does work hard really mean? Like, if I could do the same job in 2 hours, you could do it 4. Why is that person? Yeah, exactly. Working smarter, not harder. So that's important. For sure. We got some more comments. We got Tutu, not to the own horn, but Tutu got our letters. Exactly. Oh, then we got a comment from Jonelle here, Uncle. He says, amazing. All in all, your efforts is never a failure. Right. Just pushing. Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. We have another comment here. 2 boxers can control effort unless one has a broken arm. Then there needs to be time for healing. That's true. Outcome of winning the fight is no longer a priority. That's true. Yeah. Like, if your arm broken, you're not thinking about winning. That's what I got from that. So we have, for the Black community, I wonder if some of what people experience is imposter syndrome versus internalizing the negative thoughts and behaviors of those around us. Oh,
talk about it.
You gonna add something to that,
Edna? I'm sensitive, and sometimes, no, honestly, like sometimes stuff hurts. Like, I had a conversation with my sister-in-law the other day, and she talked about like being Black in a more professional environment. They stay in Virginia, and she was talking about having conversation with neighbors, and it would always seem like they were trying to validate her, like, oh, how are you here? How did you get here? And stuff like that. So I think when we have those when we experience those microaggressions or we have these negative external experiences, again, they weigh on you more than you think. So it can start to play in your mind, and it's not even your own record. It's just a repeat of what you're constantly experiencing. So that, I think that's a great comment, because sometimes it's not coming from shame, or I like to really pinpoint this about an issue about worthiness. I think we have a lot to say about worthiness in this conversation as well, but I don't want to underestimate the fact that we're more sensitive than we think we are, and people's opinions of us and experiences with people, especially of other races, how they may predefine us. It does take a toll. So I think that's a great comment, Sweet Rattler.
I talk about it all the time with my clients, not necessarily about race and culture, but just in general, how like other people's records or voices become your own. I think what happens is we don't know the difference. I mean, for the Black community, that could be a whole topic in and of itself. Like, what is our, thoughts and records, and what is coming from outside? And I think we don't know. Like, I think there's a lot of it we don't know. I think some of it we do know, working hard to figure it out. But there's a lot of stuff that we don't know. And I think that sometimes you have to be honest. We don't know. You know what I mean? Like, but this is where we at. You know what I'm saying? And so how do we move through it? Because I think getting caught up in that sometimes as a way to get out of it, our history goes back too far here. You know what I'm saying? And we don't know where the rest of it's at. I mean, we're Haitians, so we have a little bit of a shorter distance. But in terms of the Black, African Americans who are here, I mean, how are you going to determine that? Like, what's your voice? How? Like, who gonna tell me? You know what I mean? So here's more comments. I think so the causes of imposter syndrome, the whole internalizing your voice piece makes sense. So they're agreeing here. I'm gonna make sure there's any other comments I'm missing.
I'm seeing one about Haitian speed. It says, yep, this one. Imposter syndrome in the Black community can be influenced by stereotypes about racial or ethnic groups and so on. Right. I've had the experience of going into predominantly white or Hispanic firms, and it was very evident that I was the only Black person there. So I was struggling, especially in my first year of practice, because you have this preconceived notion of what things are supposed to look like, number one. And then when you get there and you realize there's sort of an isolation, and I have to only speak from my experience, I kind of felt like people were watching you, like watching your moves and things like that. So I didn't want to fall into any stereotypes, but I also didn't want to seem like a pushover or things like that. And I had to really have a fine line to balance what was sticking up for myself and what was being perceived in a certain way. Angry Black woman, not educated, how did she get here, things like that. Or you could still have a degree, but you're still like hood and stuff like that. I was fighting against all of that and trying to find what was more natural to me and how to respond to those situations. So I think that's a great point.
That is a great point. No, it's so true. And I think, this is a great conversation for hopefully everyone so far is reflecting on kind of their experience with imposter syndrome, because I think, again, it's a fancy word I feel like people hear, but you may not necessarily know what it means directly, but hopefully this kind of clarifies what it means and if you've experienced it before. And I would imagine you probably have, because remember, it's about how you feel on the inside, and like maybe not being satisfied, maybe not being content, feel like you need to do more, work hard, which we know our community thinks about that all the time because of what's been perpetuated to us. And then even though we are getting those tangible outcomes, it still doesn't feel like it's enough. So that's the, again, reminder of what imposter syndrome is, and with the cultural implication of that kind of adds more to it, because of when Brittany Carter was here last month, we were talking about worthiness, Edna, right? And so she was talking about how our self-worth, in terms of like historically with slavery and those type of things, about how that gets attached to working hard, right? Like that's how we came here, was to work hard. You know what I mean? So like, if you fast forward that to where we are now, which obviously when we're academics, we're not necessarily where we were before, but we haven't had conversations that breaks down that psychology though, right? I mean, we had some, I'm not saying we're the only ones, but not necessarily as much as other conversations, I feel like, and she was saying. And so how much of that we can bring to our conversations now, that, yeah, we can work hard, but we don't have to always work hard. Like, we can be strong, but we don't have to always be strong. She mentioned Black girl magic. That's what she wants to dismantle. Like, that perpetuates the whole like Black women being strong all the time, kind of thing. It's like, yeah, I could be magic, but I don't want to be magic today. I just want a hug. I want some ice cream.
I ain't got the magic. I ain't got the magic today, okay?
I got the magic, and if I do, I don't want to tap into it because I'm tired. Okay, I'm tired. So we got some more comments here. how do we as Black people overcome that? Just to clarify, so do you mean overcome imposter syndrome? Make sure I got that right. Because I'd be ready for all of them. I take my space and let them know, yeah, I'm not the only one. But yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I do think part of helping imposter syndrome, like as a community, kind of get past it, is to reclaim our space. And I say reclaim because we are born so we have space, you know, in this earth, so to speak. So I do think reclaiming that and kind of, well, first of all, I think we have to notice it. Let me say that first. Like, we have to notice that we're experiencing that, first of all. And then once we do, I think reclaiming that space and saying, like, I am here. This is my space. I do deserve to be here. But also when you have those moments when you feel like you don't, because sometimes I think as Black and brown people, it works in our favor to present in that way because it helps us not break down all the time, right? But there are going to be times when you don't 100% feel it. It's like the fake it till you make it that Edna was talking about with Rihanna's song. Like, I think there are spaces and times where you need to do that, but I think you also need a space to be vulnerable and let those other emotions out, because as Edna was saying earlier, the emotions got to go somewhere. So we don't want to only stay on that avenue, but I think we have to do that to be able to push forward, because we don't want to dwell on it. You know, that's that polarizing part. Like, we don't want to dwell on it, but we also don't want to necessarily ignore our feelings necessarily all the time either. So that's a challenging space to be in. So there you go. I had another question, Edna, but I'm going to skip it because I feel like we kind of answered it in the first one, unless you have something you really want to add about it, which was the Black love and imposter syndrome. What are your thoughts on it together? Anything different you want to add to it?
No, I think that goes back. Yeah, I think that goes back to the earlier conversation about like representation for me. My first experience of seeing a Black lawyer on TV was from In Living Single. No, In Living Color. Not In Living Color. Living Single.
Yeah.
With Queen Latifah, Maxine Shaw, attorney at law. Like, that's literally what made me think this was possible. And I was like, she's sassy. She got attitude, but she's smart. She's smart as a whip. She knows her stuff. And it really that was the first Black woman attorney I seen on TV. And she had the little plaques and all of that stuff. So she was really natural all the time. And I think it goes back to seeing what's possible and knowing that there's not a ceiling. I don't know if you've heard of this story where they had like the fleas in the jar. So fleas can normally jump a few feet high, but when they're placed in a glass jar that's only about 6 inches, they adapt to that and only think that they can jump 6 inches because they're so used to hitting that ceiling. But when you have things like representation that lets you know, okay, so I don't even have to just stop here. I can do this, I can do that. Well, I thought I would like this, but maybe I can just turn it into here. But if you don't know what your options are, if you don't have exposure, how do you know what you're capable of?
That's so true. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that goes back to the, one, obviously with that kind of the glass ceiling analogy too, like in the Black and brown culture, obviously they say, oh, like we say, go to school, do this, or all you gotta do is, you know, whatever, you'll be fine. You'll get everything, you know, just keep going through the system and you'll be okay. You'll get what you are desiring, so to speak, right? But then when we get to those actual spaces, we may be the only, you know, Black and brown person there, or maybe if there are others there, they're putting you against each other. Like, there's a whole bunch of things that happen in those spaces that we don't anticipate, you know, because we are told one thing. But it doesn't mean you stop trying. It just means to acknowledge that there is going to be some challenges in that glass ceiling. So you think there's no ceiling, but there's a glass there. It's actually something that's blocking you. And if you know, I know there's some people that feel like they don't want to focus on race. They don't want to focus on that. They just want to be themselves and be them. And I think that's a okay way to think about it. But then what happens when you are faced with something? I think when people do and they can't, how can I say, like, deny it, I think you're going to do worse to yourself. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying focus on that all day. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. But if you don't at least acknowledge that it exists, and then you are faced with it, someone you love faced with it, then you're going to be invalidating yourself or the person you love in their own experience. So there has to be some acknowledgement that it exists at least. And so same thing with the glass ceiling, and that the jar example, I think, is a great example in terms of like, okay, what happens when it's not there, you know? And some of it is a mental thing, of course, but not all the time, you know, so to speak. So I think that's important. All right. So any other comments in the chat before we move forward to our last question? This is the question where everybody got to participate in this one. This one we do our honesty versus compassion. What do you call it? Question here. So I'm gonna go and pose it for Edna. I'm gonna see if I can put it. Yeah, I can put it in the banner so y'all can see it too. So Edna, I'm gonna ask you the question, and everybody else can participate.
in a relationship, if you had to choose one, and I know you answered this question last time you were here, but we're gonna answer it again. If it changed, hopefully we'll see if it changed or not. Honesty versus compassion. If you had to choose one, you only could choose one for the conversation. What would you choose?
It's always gonna be honesty for me.
You're not gonna think about compassion. Oh Lord.
Because I'm gonna repeat my answer from last time. Just because you lean more towards honesty does not mean it's exclusive of compassion. It doesn't. To me, it doesn't mean that you have to have one to the exclusion of the other. Honesty, I think, is a sign of respect. I think it's a sign of giving that person their dignity and just being real with them. When you know what's real, you know what's in front of you, you know what you have to do. You know what I mean? You don't have to parse through a lot of extraneous information just to get to that. When you give somebody the honest truth with compassion,
you cheating now. You put a compassion.
you give somebody the honest truth. I think that empowers them. I think it helps them. I think that compassion is a longer way to get to the same destination. Like it means that
compassion is a longer way to get to the same destination.
Right. Like I can be straightforward with you and say, hey, when you do this, it has a negative outcome. Compassion, the way I process it in my mind is I'm going to soften that up a little bit so that it doesn't sting. And I'm using all these extra fluffy words. And I'm not saying be blunt and just be out here just negligent or reckless with people. But I think that honesty, I think getting to the root of things, it just helps people move along quicker. It gets you there faster. So it's honesty for me.
I'm gonna add to that, but I want y'all to drop in the chat. So the first live I had, I think it was March. I did one with myself, and I think compassion won. So I like to keep a tally. And the last month I did one with Brittany Carter on worthiness, and honesty won first. Excuse me, compassion won last time. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious to see what y'all think in the chat, so we can see who wins this time. I like to keep a tally. At the end of the year, I'm probably gonna do like a little something about it because I'm really curious. Because people go back and forth sometimes. So we have honesty. I could have guessed that. Let me put this in the Uncle Junior says honesty 1,000, 1,000,000%. Okay. All right. So we have Edna honesty. We have another. I'm gonna tally it right now on live, and I'm gonna say what I think about it just to add as well. So yes, actually, you saying that actually kind of made me think when you said, we have another honesty in my text message. We're gonna count her. I appreciate how you said like compassion is a longer way to get to where you're going. So I get that. I actually made me think for a second too. I was like, maybe I might change my answer. But the reason that I think, I guess I'm just biased because of the work that I do, and I just feel like when I am working with clients, I feel like it translates to my personal life too, to some degree, or even professionally, honestly, with just other colleagues, that sometimes people are not ready to hear the truth. I feel like, and I've had clients actually, like there's been stuff that I've been thinking, and I don't want to say it because it's gonna be too identifying, but like there's stuff that I'll think like through the treatment, like even for like a period of time. But because I don't know if they're ready to hear like what my impression of the situation or them or whatever is, I wait. I don't say it, right? I do other things, do other stuff. And then sometimes the clients will say it first before I get to it. I'm like, I'm glad you said it, not me, And I'll say like, I don't know if you would have been ready to hear it, especially coming from a professional in the role I'm playing at that point. I know there's a potential that what I say may have more weight, so I want to make sure that I don't just say all because of whatever, I want to make sure I think it through. And when I ask them, I say, do you think you would have been able to take in what I would have said at that point? And they usually say, Melissa, I respect you. I would have heard what you said, but I don't know if I would have ready to take it in. Because it's usually stuff that their partner has been saying. If it's a couple situation, they're coming, if it's a couple, I've heard with both sides, that their partner has been saying. And then so for me, I feel like, I don't want to say it now because now it's going to seem like I'm just adding on what the partner's saying. So I got to wait till they see it themselves or until they're ready to hear it. And they were honest with me and they're like, yeah, I don't know if I would have been able to take it in. I don't know if that means that you shouldn't tell them, like, this is my professional setting, right? So I'm not saying in your personal life, don't tell people stuff or whatever. But what I am saying is, I do think it's something to say for, like, not so much timing, but like readiness, or like
if that person's ready to, and also like how detrimental is it going to be for you to tell them at this point? Like if it ain't gonna kill them, like you could wait till they're ready to hear it. You know what I'm saying?
That's where the compassion comes in. Yeah, that's where the compassion comes in. And I think that was so. When I started to laugh a little bit in my mind when you said, I said, yeah, because you're a therapist, so you're trying to deliver the message, but you're also caring about their well-being and their overall sense of, I don't know, all that good stuff, make it feel good. Me, on the other hand, you hired me to do something.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? I need to protect you. I don't have time to sugarcoat it because I'm trying to protect you, your rights, your interests. If I don't be blunt with you and I don't tell you what's coming around the corner, if you do certain things, then you might think that it's sweet and it's not.
That's true.
So I have to protect you and I have to guard you in that way. So I think that feeds more into my personality. And I'm like, what will serve them more? If I sugarcoat this and they're walking around for whatever period of time thinking that, oh, okay, this is not that bad, or if I tell them the honest truth, and then now it might sting for a little bit because of what you're saying, the readiness to receive and all of that, but you have been equipped at that point. Somebody has told you. So now the responsibility is on you. So I think it just helps, like I said before, it just helps people get to where they're trying to go quicker.
Yes, I do. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I actually didn't think of it that way. I actually didn't think about our professions, although I probably should have. Like that you're an attorney and I'm a therapist. So yeah, I think I always like to say they both are important, but it's like what you choose to lead with. I'm not saying you just lie. You know what I'm saying? But I know you're not saying just be harsh. You know, I get that. But so I think it's more about what you choose to lead with, and of course, personality plays a role. Apparently, our professions, come out of that too as well. But I also will kind of add to that, and I'll tally up the counts, is that getting to you think honesty is a way to get to someplace quicker, or compassion is a longer way to get there. And I think for me, I think of it like, well, if you're not ready to hear it anyway, then I'm gonna have to tell you like 100 more times. So it's gonna take me even longer for you to get it. Or I gotta wait till you're ready. So it's gonna, either way, it's gonna take long.
That's true.
So I know. This be our real conversation, y'all. Y'all fly on the wall right now.
It's just a different way to care. It's just a different way to care. Like it's all showing care. Like we're all showing concern. But it's just a different way to approach it.
Yeah, that's why these two characteristics, I think, of people in relationships are very important. And I know people sometimes like, why you gotta make us choose, kind of thing. But it's to make people think, because I think one, it helps like, who you are, like in terms of what you would lead with, and also what you prefer. Like, for example, that's our friendship too. Sometimes I know when we talk about, let's say what you gotta say. I'm like, okay, no, that's what I gotta say, kind of thing. And so sometimes, we tend to lead with what we are comfortable with. So I'm guilty of that, right? If I am more comfortable giving compassion because of my personality, my clients, whatever, that means I'm probably doing that in my personal life. But not everybody like you being my sister friend. You may just prefer me just tell you the truth. You know what I'm saying? Just be honest. I don't got to beat around the bush, So like that challenges me to be like, okay, just because I don't, think of it this way doesn't mean that that's what Edna prefers. And so I think it's good to know like what you rested in your values, but also to know your friends, your family, your partners, like how do they prefer for you to lead? So you can consider that as well. It doesn't mean you do it all the time, but at least you can factor that in and not stay in your own box, So
that's definitely something that I had to learn, because I had the impression for many, many years, as long as you're being honest, you're good. You know what I mean? And I would realize this about how I would deliver a message. Just because you choose to be honest with the person and give them what your truth is, it doesn't mean that that's not a hard thing to do. And so when I would be telling my friends the truth or telling somebody what I consider to be the truth, I thought that I was doing a good service. But sometimes without that element of compassion, even with how you're phrasing something, it can do more damage at that point, especially if the person is not ready to receive, or if it was kind of laced with a harshness that wasn't necessary. And for me, I would try to be blunt because I felt like, oh, this is uncomfortable. I don't want to have to do this, but I feel like I owe you this truth. So I need to tell you, but it's all about how you frame it also. And I think, like I said, you don't have to have one without the other. Compassion is always, a little icing is always nice.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I appreciate that. That kind of goes with the back and forth of what you lead with. That's really good. So I'm just put something in the chat and we can start wrapping up. So without honesty, you can't see good at night. Okay, we got to do that. Agree with that.
Yes, yeah.
And then we have, this is true, but you will have done your part how they respond to you has nothing to do with you. So yeah, I mean, if you choose to lead with honesty and you do your best to hopefully be compassionate, then of course I do agree with that. So I think what Cynthia's saying makes a lot of sense. That makes me think, like, just because you are compassionate doesn't mean that. And that was my trouble too. Like thinking like, oh, I'm saying it the best way I can and they don't get it or they mad at me or whatever. Now that is true. Like you could be as compassionate as you want to be with the truth and they can still take it how they want. So that actually is really a profound statement. And I know I had to struggle with that for a minute. She's like, you're gonna lose your escrow deposit. Like she's telling her clients, like,
right. You have to be direct. Like you're gonna lose if you don't listen.
Exactly. And last comment: honesty and compassion go hand in hand. Yep, I agree that they do. But we have to have the conversation so we can be aware of it. But that is a wrap for the night. But I don't know if you want to make a comment about we're matching tonight. You want to say anything about it?
Right. So we checked in just a few minutes before the live, you guys. And then I said, oh, I'm going to wear, hold on now.
Reminders.
Right. Gentle reminders. I'm going to wear this shirt tonight. And Melissa said, oh, I'm wearing a shirt tonight too. So we'll tell a little story about it. It wasn't coordinated at all. But I definitely felt like I needed to shout out our sister, Truly Sin. And we have on her shirts today. The one that I have on says, don't break your own heart. And I wore it for two reasons today. The first one is because it's an example of Black love. I felt like I wanted to shout out my sister. She's doing great things. And so here we are shouting her out, but also because I think that these gentle reminders that she has, it's not that it fits into a variety of situations. In the one today, don't break your own heart, can fit into the context of imposter syndrome. When we're faced with these situations or different environments where it's challenging to you, and it makes you doubt yourself, having conviction in who you are in any moment, in any room, in any area will help you get out of that, help you break out of that syndrome. Don't break your own heart. What that means to me in this context is to consciously make decisions that will preserve and honor your dignity despite how you're feeling in the moment. I see myself as this person. I'm going to carry myself as this person, regardless of, oh my gosh, I made a mistake, or this seems challenging, or you know what, I don't seem to fit into this environment. I don't seem like these other people. But you're here for a reason. Your journey has led you here for a reason. You're here to make changes. You're here to make an impact. And loving yourself and knowing that you carry the responsibility to carry out your vision is an example of not breaking your own heart.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for that. I know she was in the chat earlier. She may have had to step out, but that is important. So I just put her information there on the screen. If everybody want to check out her IG page. Just a reminder as a company, what it sounds like, just kind of reminders for people to be positive and be able to uplift themselves. I'm going to go ahead and put Edna's information. And I was only able to put your IG because I have time here, but we have your Edna's IG page here. She's an attorney, paralegal, PA on IG. So feel free to reach out to either one of them for anything related to real estate, attorney stuff, gentle reminder stuff. Because again, we want to make sure that we support each other, and support means anything: sharing, liking, anything like that. Cynthia says thank you. She appreciates it very much. And just kind of make sure you follow us and make sure that we contact you as well, whatever stuff you guys have going on, so we can keep connected as well. She said, make sure to hit the like button. Thank you. I appreciate that for sure. So that's it for tonight. Next month, I'm going to make I made an announcement on Instagram, but I'm going to make it here live. So I just added a clinician to our practice. Her name is Kanisha Joseph. She's another Haitian young lady. She's working on her marriage and family therapist. She sought me out to supervise her. She's going to be running a group. It's called Healing with My Sisters. She's very excited about it. So I'm going to introduce her to everyone next month. We're going to do Black love and sisterhood because her group is about sisterhood. And we're going to talk about that. So please follow us and be able to join us next time and share with other people. Don't keep it to yourself. That's some good information.
Right.
All right, everyone. Have a good night. Stay safe. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.